PR Connections Radio presents.
Welcome to Vegas Hockey Hub here on PRConnectionsRadio.com, the voice of new media. I'm your host, Ian Rachiele. And yes, oh yes, the Vegas Golden Knights have made it to the Stanley Cup Finals. And it has been an exciting time to be a Vegas Golden Knights fan. It's been an amazing time to go over and talk about your Vegas Golden Knights. And trust me, here on PR Connections Radio and definitely on Vegas Hockey Hub, we're going to be giving you all of the recap and the analysis of the Stanley Cup Finals. But before we break down the big game, before we give you a preview of the Stanley Cup Final, before we give you a preview show and a recap show, I want to focus on something most people aren't going to be talking about. I want to give you a different perspective on this Stanley Cup Final because I have a feeling that no one else is talking about this. So during an NHL season, you will have your NHL team up here and you will have your AHL team down here. Now, for people who don't understand what the AHL is, it is the Triple A hockey. It is the upper tier of minor league hockey. For anybody who are baseball fans, it's essentially the Las Vegas Aviators in baseball. It's the G League Ignite in the NBA. It is your next step from the minors to the majors. And the reason why I mention this is because the Vegas Golden Knights have a AAA team. Your Vegas Golden Knights have a team right below them, and they play in Henderson, named the Henderson Silver Knights. But what I want to touch on this episode of Vegas Hockey Hub is how the Vegas Golden Knights used the Henderson Silver Knights to make the Stanley Cup Finals. How the Henderson Silver Knights helped the Vegas Golden Knights make the Stanley Cup Finals. That's what this episode of Vegas Hockey Hub is about. So to kick it off, let's talk about one key member of this team who actually played for the Henderson Silver Knights at some point during the year. And of course, I'm talking about goaltender Adin Hill. Adin Hill, he has been the spotlight. He has been one of the best players for your Vegas Golden Knights in this 2023 Stanley Cup playoff. There's no doubt about it. Adin Hill has been a great player for Vegas in 2023. He has helped them get to a Stanley Cup final. But a lot of people forget that Adin Hill had a start in the Henderson Silver Knights, that he actually played in the AHL for the Henderson Silver Knights, but as well as playing for the Vegas Golden Knights. He did a rehab stint in Henderson while he was recovering from an injury. So he was recovering from an injury. He goes down to the AHL. He plays a game for them, and then he comes back up to the Vegas Golden Knights. Just imagine, if I'm just going to use another baseball reference for this one, just imagine if the Oakland A's had this really great player and they sent him down to AAA. He plays a few games, then he gets brought up to the Oakland A's once again. Let's just use Seth Brown as in a comparison, because the last time I went to a Las Vegas Aviators game, Seth Brown was on a rehab assignment from Oakland. He was playing in Las Vegas, so it's kind of a parallel. Well, Seth Brown did very well in Las Vegas, and then he went back up to Oakland after he did a rehab stint. That is what happened in this scenario. Adin Hill got injured. He was on the shelf. He gets sent down to Henderson to play one game as part of a rehab assignment, and then he got sent back up to the Vegas Golden Knights. So you can say that Adin Hill is a vital part of why the Vegas Golden Knights made the Stanley Cup Finals. Well, Adin Hill had a start in the Henderson Silver Knights, so therefore a Henderson Silver Knight helped the Vegas Golden Knights make the Stanley Cup. But that's not all. You also have, when it comes to the Henderson Silver Knights, you had a player that was very useful in the regular season, a guy who was making a good impact for the Vegas Golden Knights, and he was part of the Henderson Silver Knights and the Vegas Golden Knights when it came to this season. And the player that I'm talking about is a player that, like I said, he did play in Henderson. He was there for a little bit, and now he's a vital member of your Vegas Golden Knights. And I'm talking about a defenseman, and I'm talking about right now Braden Bahal. Now, Braden Bahal was the captain of the Henderson Silver Knights. As a matter of fact, he was a very good member of the Henderson Silver Knights. He played over 50 games for them. He racked up over 90 penalty minutes. He had 15 points. Well, Braden Bahal, not only did he play in 10 regular season games for your Vegas Golden Knights, but he actually played in the playoffs for your Vegas Golden Knights. So Braden Bahal, who was the captain of the Henderson Silver Knights, played in the playoffs on defense for your Vegas Golden Knights. So that's another example of a player who was in Henderson. He was racking up valuable minutes on defense for the Vegas Golden Knights and for the Henderson Silver Knights. So Braden Bahal, Aiden Hill, those are players who have played in the playoffs and have played for the Vegas Golden Knights / Henderson Silver Knights. And then there's the third one. And this one is very important when you remember that he spent half of the year in Henderson. This was a guy that, because of Logan Thompson, because of Aiden Hill, because of the goaltending situation, he was actually dead cap for a good amount of months in Henderson, getting paid millions of dollars to be in the AHL. And I'm talking about Laurent Brisebois. Laurent Brisebois played over 20 games in net for the Henderson Silver Knights. He had around a 2.7 goals against average and a save percentage of around 91%. Now, the reason why I bring up Mr. Brisebois is because of what he contributed to the first round of the Vegas Golden Knights playoff. You cannot deny that Laurent Brisebois definitely made an impact in helping the Vegas Golden Knights get to the Stanley Cup final because of what he did in the first round. How they beat Winnipeg in round one was a vital part as to why Laurent Brisebois was a vital part of them winning that series. Now, we all know that in round two, he takes on Edmonton. He gets hurt in game 4, and Aiden Hill's been the starting goaltender ever since. But I want to keep this in mind. Laurent Brisebois and Aiden Hill both spent time in Henderson and in Vegas this year. Both of those guys made playoff appearances, and they both helped Vegas get to a Stanley Cup final. So what I'm going to say to you is that regardless of Braden Bahal, Laurent Brisebois, or Aiden Hill, they have helped the Vegas Golden Knights get to a Stanley Cup final, and them being part of the Henderson Silver Knights is just another example of how the Henderson Silver Knights have helped the Vegas Golden Knights get to a Stanley Cup final. So as we are talking about this here on Vegas Hockey Hub, I'm your host, Ian Rachiele. We are here on PRConnectionsRadio.com, the voice of new media. And follow us on social media at Vegas Hockey Hub, and follow your host at Ian Rachiele 18. I also want to say to all the shows on PR Connections Radio, definitely go watch them. Go support all the content on PR Connections Radio, regardless if it is the professionals, the love of business, if you got Cozy Stone. I mean, there's so many fantastic shows on there. Crypto and Cash, just for another example. There's so many amazing shows on this network. We have Vegas Hockey Hub. You have the Sports Angle, which is going to be on next week at 7 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Central, 10 p.m. Eastern. And, that's a hour and a half show, Sports Angle. We're going to talk a little baseball now because it's going to be the summer. But you have Vegas Hockey Hub for all the hockey fans around the world. and you have the sports angle, which is normally every Friday night at 7 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Central, 10 p.m. Eastern. Now that we got the plug out of the way for PR Connections Radio, let's get back to Vegas Hockey Hub. So who else spent time with the Henderson Silver Knights that made a very valuable member to the Vegas Golden Knights? Now, this could be regular season. This could be postseason. This could be guys who played at Henderson in the past, or these could be guys who played for this team in the past. But I'm going to say the first player that I noticed that definitely made an impact in Vegas and then spent time in Henderson, I have to go with Paul Cotter. Paul Cotter is this young, up-and-coming 23-year-old in the Vegas Golden Knights system. He has been a healthy scratch for the Vegas Golden Knights this playoff series. Paul Cotter's been a healthy scratch, but he played 2 whole seasons for the Henderson Silver Knights, and he has played over 60 games for the Vegas Golden Knights. Now, Paul Cotter, regardless if he was on the first line, he was on the 4th line in the regular season, regardless of where you put him, Paul Cotter has made a huge impact on the Vegas Golden Knights. In 62 games played, he has had 15 goals, 20 points, and a -4. So I just want you to think about that. He has had only 5 assists in the NHL, but a whopping 15 goals in 62 games. So he's essentially scoring 1 goal in almost every 4 games he is on the ice. So Paul Cotter has done exceptionally well in the Vegas Golden Knights system. And yes, he's been a healthy scratch. He has not played. But the point is, Paul Cotter has been another example of a guy who spent time in Henderson and is now doing his job in Vegas, has been part of their roster. How about Pavel Dorofeyev? Yeah, Pavel Dorofeyev. He has spent 2 seasons with the Henderson Silver Knights. And as a matter of fact, he was one of their main point leaders in the AHL. Well, he has had 20 games played for the Vegas Golden Knights, and he has had 7 goals, 9 points in 20 games, and a +4, by the way. So Pavel Dorofeyev and Paul Cotter both been healthy scratches for the Vegas Golden Knights in the playoffs, but I don't want you to forget about their experience and how they played in this in the regular season, because them playing in the regular season helped clinch a playoff spot for your Vegas Golden Knights. See, there's always a cause and effect, right? There's always a cause and effect. So because of how they did in the regular season, that's what made them clinch to a playoff spot. And because they clinched a playoff spot, they got to go to a Stanley Cup final, and that's the situation there. You also had Jonas Roundbeer, and he has spent all 3 seasons with the Henderson Silver Knights. He is this young, up-and-coming player, and he has had over 40 games played for the Vegas Golden Knights. Now, he has had only 2 goals, so unlike Cotter and unlike Dorofeyev, he doesn't put the puck in the back of the net, but he is good at making transitions. He is good at passing the puck around. He has some solid potential. And the last 2 players who played for Henderson, who are now on the Vegas Golden Knights roster on their postseason roster, you have defenseman Caden Korczak. And I have talked about this guy on this show before. I have made videos about this guy, and he has had 11 professional games played in Vegas, and he's had 2 points during that time. He is going to be a good up-and-coming defenseman for the Vegas Golden Knights, spending time in Henderson, has had a cup of coffee in Vegas. You've also had Yuri Patera. And people are going to forget that because of how injury-riddled the Vegas Golden Knights were, Yuri Patera had a 2-game stint with the Vegas Golden Knights this year, but he had an impressive 2-game stint as he had a goals against average of 2.5 and a save percentage of near 93%. So for Yuri Patera, he did very well for Vegas. And he was another example of a guy coming from Henderson and doing well for Vegas. Now, you might be asking yourself, what's next in this scenario? What is going to be next for your Vegas Golden Knights? How are they going to use Henderson to win the Stanley Cup final? Well, a lot of it's going to be with the goaltending, like I mentioned. Aiden Hill and Laurent Brisebois definitely helped Vegas get to where they are. Let's also not forget that Logan Thompson also played during the year as well, and he is an alum of the Henderson Silver Knights. So, regardless of how you look at it, all four goaltenders who started for the Vegas Golden Knights this year, not named Jonathan Quick, they all were in Henderson at one point. Aiden Hill, Laurent Brisebois, Logan Thompson, and Yuri Patera, they all played for the Henderson Silver Knights. They are all alums of Henderson. So the way the Henderson Silver Knights are going to help Vegas make the Stanley Cup Finals is with their goaltending. How they're going to help them win a Stanley Cup is by having one of their former goalies hoist the championship up high at T-Mobile Arena when all of this is done. Now, I want to also quickly mention the 4 players that are on the roster for the Vegas Golden Knights. They did not play at all this year for the Vegas Golden Knights, but they are on the postseason roster. I just want to very quickly mention them. You have Brendan Brisson. Brendan Brisson, the number 1 prospect for the Vegas Golden Knights, a guy who had 18 goals in the AHL in 2022. Yes, he has not done what a lot of people believed he was going to do. He's had only 21 career goals in the AHL, but Brendan Brisson is part of the postseason roster. When they expanded it to near 30, the Vegas Golden Knights were allowed to bring on some extra players. Brendan Brisson was part of that roster, and I feel like they're doing that just to give him the experience and allow him to be with the team during this postseason run. You also have Dyson Mayo, and Dyson Mayo was a defenseman they acquired in the Shea Weber deal. He played 15 games in Henderson. He had 4 points and a -3 on defense. Once again, I feel like this is a situation where they wanted to have some extra depth for defense, so they added some few defensemen and put them on the roster. And the last one is their number 2 prospect, and Lucas Cormier. And Lucas Cormier, who we're going to do a video on at some point on this channel, he had 35 points in 62 games in his debut year in Henderson, and he is part of the postseason roster for your Vegas Golden Knights. So when it comes to Vegas, there is some potential here, and I'm definitely proud of how they've used Henderson. But I'm also really curious on how they're going to use that roster moving forward. Because you could definitely make an argument that with certain players being free agents at the end of the year, that you could see some guys being called up from Henderson and take over some spots heading into next year. Because there's no secret that they have 5 players that are going to be free agents in Vegas. Okay, you have Brett Howden, you have Ivan Barbashev, Teddy Bluger, and Phil Kessel. You also have Brisebois, Hill, and Quick that you're going to have to deal with as well. So for the Vegas Golden Knights, you have an opportunity to actually start calling up some players because you're going to have to make some very difficult decisions when it comes to finances. Because the Vegas Golden Knights, if they shed who I believe they're going to shed, if they shed his $6 million salary, that's going to leave a little bit more money for the Vegas Golden Knights. That's going to be around $3.5 million for Vegas. But there's somebody I know, and she's very smart when it comes to the game of hockey. She's always told me, why wouldn't the Vegas Golden Knights just call up players from Henderson who are worth $750,000? why wouldn't they just call up someone like Byron Freeze or Sheldon Rample, who's going to get $475,000, and just have them play? Or call up Daniil Myramanoff, who's going to be $775,000, and just call them up instead. And I've always come back to the idea of, yes, you could do that. You could call up Caden Korzak, who's $775,000. You could call up Paul Cotter, who's $775,000. It makes a lot of sense. I understand. But you also have to understand the Vegas Golden Knights, when you have that much money you can use, that means you have flexibility. You have leverage. So I'm going to leave it to you very simple like this. Regardless of what the Vegas Golden Knights do, regardless of what decision they make in terms of long term, I do believe that there's going to be at least one Henderson Silver Knight that's going to be on the roster next year. Okay? I will not be surprised if someone like Giannis Roundbeer is on the bottom six for Vegas next year. I would not be shocked in the slightest if someone like Paul Cotter gets elevated to the bottom six and he's playing everyday minutes for Vegas next year. Because the other way the Henderson Silver Knights are going to help the Vegas Golden Knights is also what they're going to do after the Stanley Cup final, and that's going to be their decision-making heading into the offseason. So the way I look at it and the way I examine it, I would not be shocked and I will not be surprised if 3 Henderson Silver Knights players get promoted to the NHL and they are part of your Vegas Golden Knights moving forward. Now, I'm going to predict Paul Cotter. I'm going to predict Giannis Roundbeer, and I'm going to predict Caden Korzak. If I had to put on my crystal ball and kind of predict the players from the Henderson Silver Knights that could help the Vegas Golden Knights out long term, I say Paul Cotter, because of his exceptional ability to put the puck in the back of the net, 15 goals already in his NHL career. Giannis Roundbeer, he is a guy that doesn't put the puck in the back of the net, but he has already had over 10 assists in the NHL already in his young career. And Caden Korzak is actually the brightest future out of all the defensemen they currently have in their developmental system. And he has had about a dozen games in the NHL, so he already has some experience. Now, I want to ask everyone watching around the world, what do you think about the Henderson Silver Knights helping the Vegas Golden Knights make the Stanley Cup Finals? How do you think the Henderson Silver Knights did to elevate Vegas and get them to a Stanley Cup Final? Because you had Aiden Hill, Laurent Brisebois, and Jari Patera. They all played in Henderson, and they all made starts for your Vegas Golden Knights in the regular season. Your 2 goalies in this postseason played for Henderson and played for Vegas. They made an impact, and they definitely helped the Vegas Golden Knights make the Stanley Cup Finals. So I just want to leave that in your hands. I kind of want to put the ball in your court there. I also want to say, for all the people watching around the world, it's going to be an exciting Stanley Cup Final. It's going to be an amazing event. And I believe that it's going to be one of the best Stanley Cup Finals that you are going to watch. I know a lot of people are going to bring up 2018, and that's fine. But I actually want to bring up 2022 because Colorado versus Tampa Bay was very exciting to watch. Colorado versus Tampa Bay was a Stanley Cup Final that you could really watch back if you had to, because it was an amazing series. You had some good back and forth matchups, and there was a lot of positives that you could talk about from last year's Stanley Cup Final. I could also bring up 2001 when the Avalanche and the Devils took on each other in Stanley Cup Finals, and Ray Bourque is hoisting the trophy. You have Joe Sakic skating around, Pete Forsberg skating around. You had Rob Blake skating around. Those were some very crazy moments. You could also bring up the series with Carolina and Edmonton and how a true underdog with the Carolina Hurricanes ended up winning a Stanley Cup and not allowing Canada to have a championship by beating Edmonton. Even though that this has been tainted now, I can't deny that the 2010 Stanley Cup Finals, Patrick Kane shooting it past Michael Leighton to win a Stanley Cup in overtime, even though it's been tainted now, that is still a moment that a lot of Blackhawks fans and a lot of NHL fans are going to remember, that 2010 Stanley Cup Final. So there's definitely a lot you can talk about. There is definitely some good stuff you could talk about. 2011, the Boston Bruins beating Vancouver and fans rioting in Vancouver as a response. That is memorable. You could also mention the fact that the Tampa Bay Lightning having that run, that back-to-back-to-back run in Tampa Bay, that's going to be something a lot of people are going to remember. Yes, one of them was tainted because it was a bubble. I understand some people are going to say that. But the Tampa Bay Lightning making it to 3 straight Stanley Cup Finals, winning two straight Stanley Cup Finals. That was definitely a fun experience to watch. So I will say here on Vegas Hockey Hub, I'm your host, Ian Rachiele. And follow us on social media at Vegas Hockey Hub. And follow your host at Ian Rachiele 18. I also want to say follow the show at PR Connections Radio. And follow everybody on the network at PR Connections Radio. Also go to our website, prconnectionsradio.com. Get a list of every show that is on there, including Vegas Hockey Hub. And also keep up to date with everything going on here on the network. So until next time, I'm your host, Ian Rachiele, and we are going to be doing our Stanley Cup preview tomorrow, an hour before Vegas Golden Knights, Florida Panthers, Game 1. So that's going to be a fun preview show. We'll be breaking down the Stanley Cup Finals. That's going to be fun. So this is Vegas Hockey Hub. Go Knights, go! And continue watching hockey. Go support junior hockey. And let's go win the cup. Hold on, I got one more thing for you. Hold on. I'm going to say, by the way, for when it comes to the Vegas Golden Knights and the Stanley Cup Final, here's what the schedule is going to be like here on Vegas Hockey Hub. I just wanted to very quickly mention this before we get off the air, that when it comes to your Vegas Golden Knights, the Stanley Cup Final, when it comes to Florida, we are going to be doing a preview show before it, and then we're going to be doing a recap show the day after. So we're pretty much going to be making a bunch of content in between that. So this is definitely going to be a lot of fun, and it's going to be great to talk about. So this was Vegas Hockey Hub. I'm your host, Ian Rachiele, and definitely we can talk about that.